This is December 2016. Oh my God. This is me trying to be you in medical land.
Oh, you know you have to send us this file.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Oh, wait, I just want to say right at the get-go, it looks like you're doing an apology video. You filmed something you shouldn't have done in a forest setting.
This is so bad. This is so bad. I can't believe I'm showing you this. Okay, so basically,
I can't believe I'm doing this. Anyway,
no, because this is hilarious. I edited this myself too, so
Yeah?
it's even worse.
Oh, yeah.
I was getting mad on the news. They would talk about these medical studies.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are BS or they're taking them out of context and explaining them incorrectly. So I just wanted to jump in on one of them and give some context.
A new article from JAMA, a respected medical journal, puts into question if working out solely on the weekends is as equally as beneficial as working out throughout the week. It is common knowledge that exercise
Oh, whoa, that
has health
changed.
benefits, including the risk of reduction of stroke, cardiovascular disease, and improvement in overall fitness. The United States Department of Health
This is fine.
No, this is awful. This is so
but
bad.
the duration and frequency of
All
these
right,
exercises
pause it.
is actually-
So I showed this to my girlfriend at the time who's on TV, and she says, "Don't let that see the light."
On a scale of like 10 being the top, being the bottom. This is not.
This is pee whoop. No, this is two. Two out of 10.
Like a 4. Are you kidding?
This is a 2 out of 10.
This is all you gotta do is for the angle changes, overlay.
Well,
this is completely.
There's no
fine.
personality in this. I'm just reading. I'm not even reading. I'm trying to read.
But you can do the personality at the end. Hit them with the info. Again, then spice it up at the end.
But
this
if
is
you've
not
seen
bad.
one of my newer videos, like in comparison,
yes.
Yeah.
But that's also familiarity, like.
but I was even
building a
hopeful
muscle.
that like we can be there. But this is just bad. With the little mic flag and everything.
You don't get to where you are. You don't get to where any of these other people are if you don't make that video.
That's true.
That
I
is-
had to do this to prove to myself that I'm awful at it.
The only thing that you should feel bad about is whatever that mustache situation is in that. You know you have to send this file to us.
All right. Who am I airdropping this blackmail footage?
It's going
to?
straight to Amanda.
I literally made this, and my girlfriend at the time was like, "This is awful. This is just so bad." And I was like, "You're not supportive at all."
Yeah,
She's like, "No, you suck."
Is this the girlfriend that told you to go off of Instagram?
No, different girlfriend. But clearly, I've had a lot of people.
Yeah,
supporting
why do you date women that don't support your aspirations?
No, she was like, "You just need to practice or something. You suck." I was like, "Okay."
Are you happy, Amanda? I shaved.
You know what's gonna make me happier?
Fuck, what?
When you do your intro.
Sup, you beautiful bastards. Hope you're having a fantastic day. Welcome back to A Conversation With. My name is Philip DeFranco, and today we're having a conversation with Dr. Mike. Should I say your full name?
I like it because it gives context to my roots.
To
I
who
feel
you
like-
are.
Yeah, because we're celebrating immigrants in this country now. At least we're trying to. And I came here as an immigrant, so Mikhail Varshavsky is the name.
I like that you use the royal we, because
Yeah.
there's some people watching, they're like, are we?
Well, I like
Are
to
we,
think
Mike?
we're
Did
all
we have a-
immigrants here, right? Like
Right?
we all came here
Yeah.
somehow.
I'm Italian, even though Liza Koshy on the last podcast said I'm not,
Yeah,
because I don't know limoncello.
yeah.
Is that how you say it?
Limoncello.
Limoncello? I was like, I don't know.
You
I've never
could say
had
that
it.
quite dangerously. You got to be careful.
I was like, how?
Limoncello.
Ooh, okay. So, Mike, for those who, for some reason, have not seen your videos, can you describe what you do?
Okay, so I'm a board certified family medicine doc. I've been practicing for 2 years after I finished residency in New York, New Jersey area, and I make videos about health, but I try and do it in a fun, easy to understand, relatable way. But most importantly, with the information and the medical ethics being at the top of my mind and making sure I deliver quality information to people. Because the misinformation is crazy now.
It is crazy, but it's also, I will say, you have a good way of doing it, because I've watched one of your Doctor Reacts to Memes videos and walk away with that learning, which I think is like, I think as an educator to some degree is the goal.
Yeah.
Right. How do you condense this? How do you make it relatable? And I love that.
It's subliminal learning. It's like what Bill Nye used to do back in the day for us.
Good old Bill Nye.
Yeah, 80s babies or 90s.
I like that you say
babies.
us. He looks like an actual grown-up man, right? You're 29 is what you
29,
said.
yeah.
I'm 33. People don't know if I'm like 50 or just like a really poor like complexion, like 18-year-old. It's really bad. I think it also doesn't, like, the weight always kind of like babies up the face a little bit,
Okay.
but the eyes
See
show
where
the
you're going
years
with
and the
that.
pain.
Yeah.
Wait, you see where I'm going with that?
Yeah. Well, to me, I feel like that's a good thing because as you age, you'll still have that. Oh, maybe I'll pass for 18.
Maybe. Well, the 4 times in my life that I've gone to someone that will do like a facial, or I think 2 dermatologists, they're like, no, they're like, oh, you have oily skin. Okay. That's great. And I was like, it hasn't been great. It was just years of like, especially when I was 18, just years of pimples. But did you ever have an issue with that?
I had really bad teeth. I had braces twice.
Oh,
that was brutal.
I should have done that. I really should have done that.
Well, it's important because it changes your facial structure as you age. I think that's like a big thing that people don't think about.
I think that's what I'm scared about is because I've had conversations where I was thinking, I'm in a decent enough position.
Veneers and
should I do veneers? I've seen some people just do full on individual implants. I've seen some people do the full, and I don't know. It's like
not that
hit
kind
or
of
miss.
doctor. Can't help here.
I'm not asking you to do it.
I don't know. You'd be surprised
thanks
how
for
often
coming
people
out.
give
Can
medical
you
advice.
hook up a deal?
I literally walk out of like my car in a parking lot and someone will be like, can you look at this scratch? I'm like, I don't even know you. Why do you think I'm a doctor? They're like, you're tagged.
Oh, that has to happen all the time.
That happens all the time.
Well, so a question though I have, with you making YouTube videos, with you doing TV shows, with you somehow flying out here on a Friday based off of a random Twitter conversation that we had.
That's the best Twitter conversation.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
well, you saying that you would never do my show because I say bastard. I say see you Friday. Then I say, hey, would you actually like to come in? Because I'm an idiot. I always assume everyone's out in LA because everyone makes that horrible jump. And then you're like, yeah, I'll fly there. It'll be great. And I'm like, from where? New York. Oh, okay.
I like to be easygoing.
I take that as like the ultimate compliment.
Well, I take it as the ultimate compliment that you even want me here. Although I see, at least when I've watched your episode with Casey Neistat, you also kind of invited him spur of the moment. And then on that video, if you read the comments, like who would you want to have on next? I'm nowhere to be seen in that.
Nowhere to be seen.
So you must be like really jumping into the Rolodex. Like who can you get?
No. So what happens is I know that I need to schedule people.
Okay.
Wednesday rolls around. I see that tweet literally as I go, oh man, I need to start contacting people because I don't have like a professional booker. This podcast is my escape.
Okay.
I get to not talk about the negative things, learn about something. Even just you coming in, maybe people see the pictures. We just surprised you with puppies.
Yeah,
that's not my normal day.
It's not?
No,
you should do that more.
Best question in the world I said to you was on Wednesday. Someone asked, what's the puppy budget? And I was like, that's the budget question I want every day of my life. But the question that I was going to ask is, with you doing all those things and being a doctor, how do you find the time?
Yeah, I think in life, anything that matters to you, you'll find the time for. It's like if your significant other or something is not giving you attention and you raise that issue multiple times and they say it's because they're busy, it's because they're not interested. I hate to be the bearer of bad news there, but
you're ruining relationships right at the top.
Look,
I'm
sorry. Like we have to be honest about it. So I'm very passionate about healthcare. That was my dream from day one. I actually did an accelerated medical program. I graduated medical school at 24. Actually, when I started medical school, they had an opening party welcoming everybody. I couldn't go because I wasn't 21. It was at a bar. So I was really young and very passionate. And I started my Instagram in med school, just showing what it's like to be a med student. Because I wanted to show that you can have a life, you can go out, you can be happy. Because otherwise people think you have to like turn off all your social contacts and never see your family. Sometimes, but then sometimes you have time and you can balance it. And I wanted to show that on Instagram. Then once I did that quite successfully, I moved over to YouTube and I'm making really cool, innovative medical content that still young people are watching, which I'm really happy about. And now I feel like we can actually battle something and make a change. Like the vaccine conversation, the vaping conversation, the crazy weight loss supplements and detoxes. I now have some power to give pushback to these people.
Yeah.
That's
exciting. one, because the audience, and then 2, giving your job the authority, which I think I've definitely, over the past few years, I've enjoyed seeing authoritative figures in certain genres jump in. Yeah. Because you would sometimes see it on a BuzzFeed video where it would say like City Planner plays this game or City Skylines, stuff like that. But having someone that can be a repeatable resource. That's been key. Actually, on the note of vaccines,
I love it. No, this is
so I know not a shocker, you're pro-vaccine, right? I watched the video and maybe I'm misremembering. I feel like you're very giving and thoughtful to those who are still anti-vax, whereas I'm I personally don't believe many in that community are I keep saying recruitable to reality. And for me, it's less the intent because, as you've said in your video, their intent is they're trying to protect their kids.
Yeah.
Right. But my main thing is everyone can have good intent, but the results. Do you feel like being open has actually been helpful? Do you feel like you've talked to people and they went, you know what, I've seen the light?
Sure. Part of what I do in being a family medicine doctor is I study influential psychology. So how can I influence a patient to make the best decision for their health? And what I've learned is the first step in having someone look at your views with an open mind is you have to get them to like you. And you, like pretty much every other doctor out there, gets very mad when parents don't want to vaccinate their children because they're worried about, like, you're doing this for a good reason. But now this emotion that you're having will right away put you at odds with someone who disagrees with you. And you're putting a stone in between that conversation. And now you're almost setting yourself up for failure. So what I try and do is keep that pathway between us as open as possible and actually try and find avenues where we agree. So if a patient who's anti-vaccine comes in, right away I'll try and find avenues we agree. For example, do you believe that measles is a dangerous illness? They'll say, well, yeah, sure, but it's good to have it. Okay, we can agree on that it's a dangerous illness. Do you believe that my interests are in the best interest of your child, that I want your child to thrive? Oh, yes, I agree. That's two things we agreed upon. Instead of me right away being outraged and angry at them that they don't believe in vaccines, I've created two avenues where we agree. Now there's a way more likelihood that they'll see what I'm saying when it comes to vaccines. Maybe I'll give one vaccine out of 4, but it's still a greater victory than evicting them from my practice.
Sure.
And them just getting a letter from someone who they can pay and prove that they have an exception or whatever, which does happen, by the way.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's why we're seeing the situation in California, right?
Exactly.
Where we saw those protesters the other week. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, I try and find that line of common ground. And so far, it's been really successful. People are more likely to be open-minded and think through these things. And really, the point that gets missed here is we see these people who are like totally out there that believe the government conspiracies, all that, right? That's really a small percentage that's always been around. They're just like that outlier of population that will always believe that no matter what.
Right.
But now with social media and the algorithms favoring extreme content and like, oh, vaccines are dangerous, like that's clickable, right? So with those people finding social media, people who are vaccine hesitant, meaning they're unsure, they just want to make sure they're doing right by their kids, they're not having these crazy beliefs, they go on social media and then they get poisoned by this information.
Sure.
What do doctors do about it? Zero. We have no doctors on social media. I mean, very few who are credible, giving good information. So I come in and say, I'm going to fill this void. I'm going to come make fun content, but also teach them something in the process of how we, decide whether or not vaccines are safe. Do they have side effects? They do, but the benefits outweigh the harms. And that's the thing I repeat over and over again on my channel. The thing that's very difficult about arguing with someone who's completely anti-vaccine is that they're so sure that they're right. And doctors cannot be so sure that we're right. Studying medicine requires a little bit of humility because things change in medicine. Things that we believe are facts change all the time. In fact, like a great example of this is we've had species that were labeled extinct that we then found like later at the bottom of the depths of the ocean. Oh, oops, they're not extinct anymore. But if you asked before that period, we would say it's a fact. So we have this level of humility where we say, this is the best information we have on hand now. It may change, but this is what we're recommending because this is the best almost like a poker player. You can lose a hand even against someone who's worse than you, but you're making the best decision you can with the limited information at hand.
I love that. So when you put out that video, what followed that? Did you get this wave of you're paid by Big Pharma? Did you like all these? Because I know that when I have talked about it and it ends up on certain private Facebook groups and stuff like that, all of a sudden you get this random wave that you didn't expect where people start just the craziest things. Do you, one, get that? Do you react to it? Because I totally understand your ability to try and keep things open, right? But do you have to resist, I guess, the urge to dunk on those people as a way to kind of keep the door open for others? Yes,
you can't dunk because the dunking is really there just for my own gratification. So I try and put that aside, right?
Because people would love to see it. Well, that's the
they would
part.
like to see it, but then I'm doing a disservice to the actual goal because my goal isn't just to please people and create great content. It's to teach people and actually convince people to make the right decisions. So I feel like if that's my goal, I try and reach it as close as I can. And when I put out a video like the one I did, it went crazy viral. It has like 3.5 million views. I get a wave of people saying, you're wrong, look at this evidence, but it's very small. It's, again, that small population who's always existed and have been anti-vaccine. And I don't react to it. I look at what they're saying, actually. I look at the negative critiques because there's always some truth in the critiques. There's always something happening. But then I realize, like, let's look at their critiques. Let's see what they're doing. Let's double check what I'm doing. And I really come out on the end saying I'm even more sure of what I was talking about before.
But the fact that you're going through the process, I think, is smart. It's admirable. What would you recommend to someone that's listening now, right? Kind of Joe Blow. They don't have your background. They don't have your experience. They come across an anti-vaxxer, right, who's so sure. What would you arm them with?
Compassion and nuance, and understanding that if they were under their set of circumstances, they may very well come to the same conclusion.
I like
Once
that.
you can understand that, a lot of things change in perspective for you. And people, and this applies not just to the vaccine conversation, this applies to cancel culture, outrage culture, whatever it is. Until you realize that you're just a little bit of nuance away from understanding how they got there, only until you have that understanding and compassion can you actually do something about it. If you want to just be outraged, cool. If it makes you feel good, do it. But if you actually want to make a meaningful change, just being outraged doesn't help.
Yeah. Okay. So talked about that. I'm interested regarding your thoughts on vaping, given kind of what we've seen over the past 2 weeks.
A lot.
One, what are your thoughts in general about the vaping situation that we have in the country right now?
I think the companies that have supported vaping because it's in their financial interest, Juul being a prime example, have really benefited from the perception that vaping is quote unquote safe. They actually went to schools, this is under Congress testimony, and told children that, oh, soon it's going to come out that these are 99% safer than cigarettes. These are great. And they've said these statements to children who are very impressionable. That's horrible to me because we had a rate of smoking that was dropping down drastically. We made great changes on a social level, not allowing smoking indoors, in parks, taxing the product, whatever. We did a great job with it. The smoking rate in 2000 for children was like in the mid-20s. We dropped it 17 years later to 5%. It was single digits, so kids weren't smoking at all. Now the vaping numbers are around 30%. Wow. So this product was intentionally, in its intention, was to market to people who were smoking to get them to quit smoking and do harm reduction and use this product.
So I guess kind of the question there, because I know that a point that you've hit on is there needs to be more research.
Okay.
But based on kind of the one-to-one comparison right now, not that you, and this is in no way you saying, yes, go vape.
No, I can give you a very political answer on
Do you
this.
feel like it is a safer alternative, right? If it's like breathing in, burning car fumes versus burning a piece of paper. I don't know.
I think this is to me, it's a funny comparison to make, but risk reduction is part of what I do. So for example, if I have a patient that refuses to use condoms and I know this patient is going out, let's say it's a female patient for this case, and she's going out and she's having a lot of partners and I'm worried about her having an unintended pregnancy. And I'd say use condoms because that's the best way to not only prevent pregnancy and also STIs. But now I know she states that I'm not going to use condoms. I have two routes. I can say, well, I did the best thing that I could have and recommended it, and she's not going to do it. That's on her. Or I can say, well, at least I'll prescribe you an oral contraceptive so you won't have an unintended pregnancy, but you may get an STI. Risk reduction, right?
Right.
So we practice risk reduction all the time in our practices. When it comes to vaping, if you're an adult, otherwise healthy, non-pregnant, not a child, adult, a key word there, and you're smoking cigarettes and you want to stop, it's cool to try vaping. There's some good evidence to show that getting off of regular cigarettes and transitioning to vaping shows promise. I'll say that. But that's not what's at issue here. The issue is these vaping companies have taken a page straight out of Big Tobacco's playbook, like Joe Camel days where they had the cartoon camel, and they're going to schools, they're advertising near schools, their Instagrams are all hip like young people smoke or vaping these products, and they're getting young people hooked on this that are now transitioning to regular cigarettes once they get hooked on the nicotine products. Because nicotine is really what's at issue here. Nicotine affects the development of the frontal cortex. That's what decides your ability to be addicted to something. And as a child, it's not fully developed. That's why we don't allow gambling, alcohol, drug use to kids because they haven't developed the frontal cortex. But now if they're going to start vaping, they're changing the development of that. And that's really bad.
How long does that usually take to develop?
Probably into your adulthood. So like in your
25?
early 20s. Yeah.
Okay. That's really interesting. Well, so one, I mean, I think that's the conversation in the United States, right? Regarding removing certain flavors, right? That seem directed at children. The advertising being targeted, however effectively. But there's also a different situation we talked about last week where India is talking about a full out ban.
Well, they did. They just did it.
No, I know. And that's what I mean is, so that's manufacturing. You're talking jail time. It's not limiting. Is that, do you think?
I think that's too aggressive.
You think that's too aggressive?
Yeah. The only thing I said on my video a couple of weeks ago was that I want the CDC to not, because they come out after all these like people are getting sick from vaping and there's even a few deaths.
Right.
We don't even know what the cause is, like
Sure.
which kind of vaping products, what ingredients, what age groups, frequency, all that. We don't have all these questions answered. And they said, well, you should consider stopping. I'm like, you're the CDC. That's like the fire alarm going off right now and the announcement saying, hey, consider evacuating. What are we going to do? Do we go? Do we not go? Like consider, what does that mean? So if you're the CDC, to me, it says, don't vape until we figure this thing out. If we realize it's just THC products or black market products or vitamin E acetate products, whatever it is, then we can give some guidance. But until, hold off. They said consider. To me, that's weak. But no all-out bans for me.
No, all right. Okay.
Yeah.
So mainly just focused on kids. But that,
kids are not allowing the companies, like the companies not only market to kids, but also they make it, well, now they're trying to change these things. But before, it's very easy for a child to go into a grocery store and just buy it.
Really?
Yeah, like we are not doing what we used to do with cigarettes. Before, with cigarettes, we used to send undercover officers in stings to actually give serious fines for this. We're not doing that with vaping, and we need to. And then also vaping sales on eBay and all these other sites where kids can freely access it and get it sent to their home.
Well, because that's the thing that I wonder is there any sort of legislation that can actually crack down on just the youth without creating a market where, or a situation where people go to the black market more, where officially we don't know things, but if there was a place where there might be more problems, it would be an unregulated space or a place that people aren't watching. Or especially in places like India, are people just going to start smoking cigarettes again? Especially if the path already is, for some, is vaping to cigarettes. And then it feels like this cycle is just going to start again.
Banning, I don't think solves anything.
Okay.
That's like banning autonomous trucks and hoping that's going to, somehow save jobs. No, that's going to lead to new problems. So I'm not in favor of bans for things like this.
Okay. What about, we were talking a little bit earlier about body positivity versus genuine health, right? Sure. And the balance there. I just want to kind of know any thoughts you have there.
Yeah. So, Bill Maher came out and said all these really mean things. He's a mean-spirited comedian. I feel like that's his role. And then James Corden kind of countered and did a really good speech that people really supported, saying like, this is wrong what you're saying. It's
because Bill Maher said bullying, like maybe we need more bullying. Is that what it was?
I don't want to misquote him. But basically, I'm going to paraphrase it. It's something along the lines that fat shaming is good. We should continue doing it.
Okay.
Like that's the side he took in this debate. I'm going to make that up. And then James Corden said, no way. We shouldn't do this. We should accept people and be more sensitive to this. As a physician, I have sort of a middle stance on this. Fat shaming on its own, where you're making fun of someone for being overweight, is useless. It's not helpful in general, and it's immoral, and it really breaks people down and creates new problems for them from a mental health standpoint. However, on the other side of this, we also shouldn't support people saying, oh, it's totally okay that if you're overweight. Well, it's okay. You're not a bad person if you're overweight. It doesn't define you, your weight, but there's a way to become healthier. So let's talk about it. So it's not coming from a judgmental place. It's coming from someone who would be constructive instead of destructive in their criticism.
Okay. So
and I think fat shaming is destructive criticism.
Sure.
And I would rather be more constructive with it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that makes sense. I mean, I feel like what you're talking about is, yes, self-love. You're still a valid human no matter your weight.
Of course.
But if you care about your health, this. But I guess is that a situation where that person has to figure it out on their own, right?
Of course.
Because it feels weird to interject.
That means you're a good person, by the way, that you feel weird to interject. Because if you didn't feel weird, you're going to go and say some mean things to people.
Do you think that situation, and maybe this is a stupid question, do you feel like that situation changes if we had let's say a universal healthcare system that the whole, like the government and the money is affected?
What situation changes? That people won't be fat shamed?
No, well, in the sense of if someone is, let's say, more is obese, right? And so they're going to the doctor more. There are more dollar requirements and effort given. Does that make it all of a sudden a kind of a society issue?
I don't think that on its own solves it.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you my stance on like a universal coverage. So I, as a doctor, want everyone to be covered, because when everyone's covered, we can have better preventive care, which is what I do. I'm a family medicine doctor. So I try and step in before a problem happens. right? So to me, who should benefit more? The doctor that does a procedure that saves the person from having the heart attack, or while they're having the heart attack, or the doctor that prevents the heart attack from happening.
Sure.
To me, I like being on the preventive side. But people don't know about prevention. They don't have a primary care doctor. They don't have the money for it, whatever the issue is. To me, when you have universal health care, you're more likely to put effort into that. However, when we talk about that coverage, I, as a doctor, have no idea how it's getting paid for. I have no idea, is this truly going to be for everybody? And when I hear smart people talk about this in the economic space that know way more than me, they say that we need to be careful because because right now, if you walk into a hospital, this is actually really an interesting scenario. Those who have good insurance from their employer or they're paid on their own, that cost is much higher than a patient who's on like Medicare. The hospital gets paid less from Medicare. And as a result of getting paid less than Medicare, they upcharge us, like us meaning the people who have insurance. Like I have good coverage. And if you bring everybody to the same cost, think about how much more the cost goes up.
Right.
So right now the cost is already somewhat subsidized and it brings in all these factors that I have no idea how to solve. So am I for it? Yeah, I want everyone to be covered. How that happens, whether it's feasible, I don't know.
Right. So in concept, the general goal of it.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, you get it. Interesting.
Of course.
Oh, yeah,
because I want people covered.
Social media. So
we're solving everything today.
Right now, just you.
Look at this.
I'm just a fly on the wall.
Look at this. People called like the sexiest doctor alive. No, we're solving everything
right
today.
now.
Yeah.
No, BuzzFeed. He's not just a piece of meat. BuzzFeed. Even though before we started filming, my DP was like, hot doctor dogs. Let's do those photos, which are on screen right now if you're watching the video version. Social media. I saw that recently you had a video where you kind of addressed some controversy from a previous video, a podcast that you did regarding kind of the coddling nature of some parents in the States now, bullying versus social media. Can you kind of explain what that whole situation was?
Yeah, so I made a couple of videos. I guess you could say they're podcast style. One was an interview with a famous social psychologist, written 3 great books. His name is Jonathan Haidt. Big fan of his. He studies essentially happiness, morality, really interesting subjects that I've always been curious about. So in reading his books, I found a lot of his views made sense to me. And I guess we can say that's a form of confirmation bias. I was seeking this information to validate my thoughts. But he also introduced things in a way that I never thought about them, like giving me facts about them. And I made this video where essentially we talk about how our overprotective, overbearing nature of the current space of parents has actually hurt our children because we see these anxiety and depression rates skyrocketing in our youth. And initially some people are like, no, we're just better at catching it. Well, if that was the case, why are the rates of self-harm going up? That's not something we're just catching. That's just hospital admission rates. So we think this is a true phenomenon. It does happen. And the big reason we together kind of believe it is A, parents are doing kind of a disservice to their children by being overprotective, and B, social media is amplifying that. So we talked about this, and one of the snippets in the conversation, I said, he mentioned like, if you could have your child live in a bubble, will they never get any kind of bullying or no one will ever call them a name? Would you create a life for them like that? And I said, no. And people got really like, so what? You want your child to be abused? And that's when a very important distinction must be made. I support, and I think acute stress is really good for our mental health. Just how acute stress is really good for our bones, because if you don't have any stresses on your bones like gravity, like if you go to outer space, your bones get fragile.
Okay.
Allergies, your immune system needs to be boosted. By the way, these are all things that Jonathan Haidt says really well. I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but allergies, your body needs challenges. When it doesn't, and you constantly are very sanitary and clean, your body starts attacking itself. That's what an allergy is. So our body likes challenges, and the same goes for our minds. And I used a couple of examples that my father, when I came home and said, someone called me a name or a teacher was unfair, he's like, figure it out. He would step in if it became a chronic problem, but that acute stress he knew was important for my development. Because in life, we will always find these acute stresses everywhere. Someone will always be mean to us. Someone will always cross us. We can't eliminate all bad in the world. So we need to learn how to handle that. And if we always are living in this closed off bubble where no one says anything bad, we're setting up a child for failure. So of course, if a child's getting bullied and now with social media, that bullying comes home with them, that's where you step in. Of course you step in. But just on a one time, like this is a great example. I play soccer. I was playing indoor soccer the other day. Before I got to the courts, there was kids playing, 9, 10 years old. One of the kids gets hit in the face with a soccer ball, very gentle, and it was a soft soccer ball. Father runs in. Oh my God, are you okay? Please come sit. The child's in tears. The dad's like, oh my God, we're going to make it okay. And then the child runs off and keeps playing like nothing happened, which is what children do because it wasn't a serious injury. And the father's like, it's okay. If that's what you feel like doing, go play, continue play. And it's the more we do that for minor issues, we then, when they experience them out in the outside world, they don't have that support from their parents. They don't know how to deal with it.
Sure. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, yeah. So it sounds like you're always going to get pushed. You need to learn how to push back.
Well,
right. That might sound way more violent than what you're talking about.
It's funny. Jonathan Haidt said something kind of borderline messed up if you take it out of context.
Let's do that. We're going to clip it.
Yeah. He said, we need to be okay with social injustices. We need to learn how to be okay with. And it's not saying that we should not do anything about social injustices. It just means that if we are not ready for them and they destroy our ability to function, we can never make changes to the social injustices. So first we need to be okay with them so they don't destroy our pathway. And then we need to figure out how to be constructive and productive and address them.
Interesting. So if you had a kid right now,
Yep.
when would you allow them on social media?
Mid to late high school.
Wait, okay. Oh, wow.
Yeah, very late.
You think you're going to be able to keep that technology out of their hands?
100%.
You are.
Yeah.
You are a confident man.
Because I knew what I did to sneak around. So I know what the kids are going to do.
I was like, wait, what would you do to sneak around?
Well, whatever. Like, I mean, you hide. When LimeWire came out, I was hiding LimeWire from my parents.
Well, I like the time where parents were technologically ignorant, where I could turn off the monitor and they were like, okay, well, the computer's off. Yeah. And I was like, I'm going to sneak in 30 minutes later. You don't even know. I'm going to steal some stuff that I think is music and is actually weird porn.
See?
Yeah.
Now you know.
Yeah, we've recently made the decision to pull back like even the iPad. It was like, okay, let's do YouTube Kids. Actually, let's curate it. Actually, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
Right? Because I don't know. And I think what made me stop was I thought back to my childhood, and the TV for me was 100% the babysitter. And even having kind of an inkling of that, I felt a little bad.
Yeah.
It was just like, no, I much rather would be outside. Something we've started doing with our son, because I talked to you a little about it, is like even just in the mornings, he and my wife now go for runs, right? Get energy out, do something productive, hopefully develop a habit, just having those opportunities.
So what's interesting about kids is we try and do all these things that we think are going to help them or make life easier. The best thing you can do for your kid is lead by example. That's how kids learn. They're sponges. If you say you should exercise, but you don't, they're not going to do it.
Yeah.
They're just not going to do it.
You're making me feel like a hero. I was like, this morning I worked out with Trey. It was great. It was good.
That's commendable, because that's what's really going to make a lasting change. So you could say all you want, like don't use the iPad. You could even take it away. But if you're always on it, that's what they're going to learn is okay. So it's really important to lead by example and make the changes in yourself first and be in a healthy and happy place before you start telling your kids what to do.
I was like, somehow the conversation of bullying led me down okay, I won't play video games until my son's asleep. I'm trying to hide it.
Well, see, that's okay, because I feel like parents are very into being friends with their children. And while that's good on some levels, it could also cause some issues, because there needs to be a disciplinarian in the house, someone who sets boundaries and rules. And you can't always do that if you're just a friend. It's going to make you even feel bad being a disciplinarian if you're their friend. So if you're going to do something like parents come into my office with children and then they start divulging things about their ex-husbands, ex-wives, or the struggles that they're going through. I'm like, get your 10-year-old out of the room before you tell me these things.
Sure.
Because they're not ready for it. That's why, again, we hold off vaping, we hold off cigarettes, because they can't handle that. They're not developed enough for it. So what I do to parents is I try and say, if you're going to have deep conversations, learn what's appropriate for your child with their age. And that line is different for everybody. Like one child can take more bullying than another. One child can have more intellectual conversations than another. But if we just throw it all at kids, bad outcome.
And so I guess your main thing is, if there is a bad situation, a bullying, the main thing would be interject when it becomes not an outlier.
When it becomes chronic. When it
okay.
becomes like a long-term thing where like constantly your child's coming home and you're seeing that it's affecting them. But you have to almost at the same time act in that you're not helping them.
There's certain points I will say, because I didn't have brothers or sisters growing up. I didn't really get to hang out with a bunch of kids. So experiencing things with my sons right now, it's a whole new world. And so there was a I never know what to believe. So it's like one of those things. My son did a summer camp, and one day we pick him up. You punched a kid in the face.
Okay.
And I was just like, oh. And they described this different situation. He says that he was getting picked on. He tried to go to the teacher, but they weren't there. And so, you know, he ended up punching this kid in the face. That's a situation where I'm like, I don't know how to handle this. I don't know. Obviously, it's always go find a teacher, but I don't. How do we raise children? Well, did you have brothers and sisters growing up?
Yeah, I have an older sister.
How do you raise, in your opinion, a child to not be a doormat, but not be the aggressor?
But stand up to themselves. Yeah. I mean, the fair thing to do was to say, you're in trouble, but I'm going to figure this out.
Sure.
And with the best, again, you can have
And then
limited
never
evidence.
address it.
No, I mean, if you, whatever limited evidence you can.
Yeah.
Let's say you never get enough evidence to know it's true.
Sure.
You tell them, I'm trusting you, but if this happens again, you're in trouble.
Sure. If it's chronic behavior.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So like cut them a break, but also like there's always a line. And again, for every child, it's so different because you already have your own intuition about how your child normally behaves. So if he never lashes out and all of a sudden some teacher's saying out of nowhere he started doing, there must have been some extenuating circumstance. Sure. Then you can be more, easy on. So again, it's like there's all this nuance out in the world that everyone chooses to ignore in context. So I'm always like nuance.
Yeah. I get that. Regarding social media, you talked about kind of the potential pitfalls, especially for kids. Do you think that also, one, connects to adults, and two, what's your relationship with social media? I feel like that's become like a common trend to talk about.
Social media, burnout,
yeah,
all these topics are so popular right now. I
It's
never
so
had
in
social
style.
media. Yeah.
You did?
Yeah,
Growing
I never
up?
had social media.
Not even like a MySpace?
I had a MySpace. I don't think that's the same as like Facebook now because it wasn't algorithm driven.
Sure.
It's funny, Jonathan Haidt, something I pitched to him, maybe he might use in his books, is that I don't think it's social media that's evil. I think it's algorithms that are driving social media.
Interesting.
So MySpace was never toxic. Like you might say like, why aren't you on my top, whatever it was, but that's it. There was no toxicity. It was just a place to hang out.
Yeah.
But now when algorithms come in, it's like it forces you to do things that you naturally wouldn't do, like overanalyze your pictures, like over Facetune your pictures, and feel like if you don't give the algorithm what it wants, a constant post, you're going to get pushed down. So it puts all these pressures on that never existed with social media when it was just social media. So I think it's social media plus algorithm that's really driving all of this. So I blame the algorithm gods.
And I guess that's kind of connected then to the algorithm. It's like gamification.
Yeah. AI, gamification. To me, it's drugs, right? Every time your phone lights up with like a like, a comment, your picture does well, your video does well, it's a dopamine hit. So now you have a 16-year-old who's getting addicted to this type of notoriety. It's why child stars actually don't do well when it comes to mental health. They have a lot of troubles because there's so much of this dopamine rushes every time fans do this. And that's what social media is. Now social media, anyone can be popular.
So do you think, what are your thoughts regarding like those changes that Instagram wants to do universally where like removing public likes? Do you think that makes, as it's not only a man that is on Instagram, but has a dog that is Instagram famous?
I don't know. I'm curious what's going to happen to it. I mean, the thing is, we always have to come back and remember that these companies are financial institutions that want to make money.
Yeah.
So to them, as much as great people say they should police this, they should make sure that they should look out for the welfare of their children, that's not what their goal is. Their goal is to keep this as going as long as possible and get the money up.
And take the fewest hits possible the entire time, yeah.
So
I know Mark Zuckerberg doesn't care about me.
I mean, I don't want to say personally, but I like to make a company.
Directly,
he
just
hates
Mark
you.
Zuckerberg.
Yeah. But I think that these companies, like for example, they changed the way that your Instagram feed is from chronological to now what they think you like.
Sure.
That's a huge problem. That's a huge problem, not only because the algorithm messes with you and now you feel like your reach was cut, financially becomes a problem. For them, it's great because then it takes away your power and allows them to advertise more. But why it's the biggest problem is it encourages you now to do anything you can to please the algorithm at all costs. Because so that now it's, I got to do something to increase my reach. And once it falls, I have to be desperate.
So now it's this like thing that was supposed to bring humans together, but it's encouraging behavior that's not human.
Yes. It
That's really
disconnects
interesting.
us more than it connects us.
So then a question, why do you have like an Instagram for your dog? Because I get all the other stuff.
Well, I think the dog just brings happiness to people. So I don't think.
So it's joy.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
a joy thing. But I think you can use social media responsibly. I think there's a way to do it. And hopefully my YouTube channel and your YouTube channel for that matter is a great example of that, where somebody can come on and educate while they're distracting somebody with humor and giving them something that is going to make them better as a person. Now, as you know, that's not that's on the trending pages most of the time.
Sure.
It's controversy, it's drama. I hate to put the beauty people out there, but like the makeup community on YouTube is crazy toxic.
Every community gets a turn. The beauty community just really they just added more numbers behind everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what's getting front page news. The songs now, I mean, Percocet, Molly Percocet, like Prime, like what? Literally, I saw like a 10-year-old patient the other day. Percocet. I'm like, oh my God. Oh my God.
It just kills you.
Yeah. Like, do you know what you're saying? That's why my first video on YouTube was describing what Percocet, Molly Percocet was, because I feel like people don't know. Like, at least kids don't know.
So you were the video version of a Google search for parents.
Yes.
I
was trying to be.
You're like, this is what they're saying. Yeah. Here's another video about what TMI means.
Yeah. I feel like I should do that. I feel like BuzzFeed does that.
Eggplant emoji. Yeah. Wait, so regarding, actually, you know what? I was thinking regarding your dog. I keep going back. It sounds like I'm trying to do a hit piece on your dog.
Bear, what are you doing?
Bear, what did Bear? We have this tweet from Bear's Past. No.
Oh my God, cancel Bear. Can we start that hashtag for this episode?
That's the thumbnail. It's just like, no. So for your dog, I think in previous videos you've talked about having your dog as an emotional support animal.
Okay.
Have you actually done that?
I haven't, but Bear is in the process of getting certified for that so he can come with me to work at the hospital.
Okay.
So I work sometimes on weekends and I have shorter days on the weekend. And I thought it would be great to bring him with me on those short days and then walk around like the pediatric ward and even the adult ward for that matter and have him visit people. Because we have a program in our hospital where when patients get admitted, they can circle if they want the support animal to visit them. And he's awesome. He's huge. That seems awesome, yeah. He's like just like biggest joy.
I wish we could even have an office dog. But the reason I wanted to ask you about it is it feels like I've seen stories, especially out of California, that the system is being abused by people that, hey, emotional support peacock is a thing. That was my friend. No. What are your thoughts around that? Do you feel like it's not as big of a deal or it is something that kind of hurts the whole system?
I haven't figured out yet. I see why people get upset by it. I haven't quite found good reasoning or evidence why it's so bad.
Okay.
So like you look at someone and they have a dog and they're just like playing with their dog. You don't know. Do they have an invisible disability that you don't know what they have? You don't know how bad their anxiety is. Do people game the system? Yes. How do you prove it? Very difficult. So like, I haven't seen it be that. If it's becoming a problem where like, I'll give you an example. In New York, they issued a bunch of unlimited parking permits to like teachers and like firefighters, whatever, like public workers. And then because they issued so many, they started getting sold because think about the value of parking in New York City unlimited anywhere. Well, guess what? People just started tossing their cars in areas where you need access and they started blocking roads and it became a big issue. Look, that's evidence where a good intention backfired. But here, I haven't quite seen it. Maybe there are some instances. Maybe the comments are going to blow up here and people are going to be like, Mike, you don't know?
You don't know.
You don't know?
It's constant.
I try to get off the plane and the peacock bit me. Or what did peacocks do?
So actually, to go back to the podcast, the kind of non-controversial part or one of the clip that you showed in one of your recent videos was people these days are less inclined to share. They're kind of scared.
Yeah.
Even sometimes when I'm phrasing a question, right? Sometimes it takes a little extra because I know that people can clip it. Yeah. Do you find yourself not sharing or even in that kind of moment a second ago, nervous to say certain things?
I think that's good. It's like we're being careful with our words. I think when we are scared to say something we truly believe, that's when it becomes problematic. But then it's on us to figure out why we're scared to say it. So when I started Instagram, my ex-girlfriends at the time were like, oh, no one's going to take you professionally because you're posting selfies. You should delete it. So I was like, I'm going to delete the app and give it 2 weeks and figure out why am I deleting it for? Am I deleting it for you? Or am I deleting it because I truly feel like it's a disservice to me?
Sure.
And I think taking the time out before you say something to say, okay, am I not saying this because I'm just afraid of blowback for no reason? Or is this really something wrong to say?
Maybe the way we need to operate is think of everything we say on the internet as like a tattoo. Right?
That's cool.
I like that. Yeah. Because it is, unfortunately, something that's going to fucking follow you forever. The only other chance you have is to just throw out a million things and hope it's in the
I mean, I
trash
just
pile.
did a video. John Oliver did a great piece on gender and race bias in the medical community, that doctors don't treat people of color and women as well as they do of people who are not. And the piece, obviously, John Oliver is a comedian in part. He delivered great information, but it wasn't 100%. It wasn't complete. And I didn't want to poison the doctor-patient relationship and just pile on and be like, yeah, look how racist doctors are. Because there's a lot, all these things are multifactorial. So I kind of came in and said, this is horrible that this is happening because I'm genuinely upset by it. We want people to get good care. And then I gave also other things that are happening simultaneously that are causing this problem to be worse. And the comments, a lot of them, well, not a lot of them, because if you take really into perspective how many comments I got, but many comments came in were saying, you're just defending the medical community. And I had to pause and think, am I defending the medical community? Well, in part, yes, because I don't want to poison that relationship. Because just how they were saying, as doctors are becoming more biased, they're becoming more reluctant to see doctors. If now they're getting these videos sent out to them by thousands and millions of views, are they going to even see doctors less? So I kind of jumped in to try and repair it. That's a very difficult conversation to have, especially as a white male. So it's like, how do I do that? Being respectful, being honest. And my thing is, what always brings me back is like, I genuinely believe that I'm not trying to do harm and I want to help as many people. So however I say it, if someone doesn't like it, I'll be able to correct it. Or at least explain why I said it.
Yeah, I think regarding that topic specifically, I end up being somewhat biased because we did a video about mortality of women that were giving birth and then post-birth. And just one, people not listening, sometimes affected by race. And then the main takeaway felt like it was just always such a big focus on having someone there to advocate for you. Right. And that was something I didn't.
Single motherhood rate.
But that was even, but I feel like that, it goes even further in the sense of just always for anyone. Cause I remember having to do that for my dad after he had kidney surgery. Cause they're like, he's on drugs. And I'm like, no, he was always on, like he was on so many pain meds before this, like he's in legitimate pain. So having to advocate in that way, it's very interesting.
Well, cause medicine is so, like, it's like life. Like, there's so many factors and variables that it's not as simple as, like, that's why AI is not taking over all of medicine anytime soon. Because there's so many variables. It's as much as an art as it is a science. Two doctors can see the same patient and give totally different plans and they're both right, which is crazy to say. But patients think like, oh, you didn't give me this, so you're wrong. Because look, this other person got this. So complicated. There's so many things that go into it. Do you have someone to take you home? What's your social situation like? Are you homeless? Like, there's so many things that we take into account when we make a decision that, sometimes it may come off as unfair. Sometimes it may be unfair. There's an implicit bias there. Great example of that is a lot of research in the last 20, 30 years was done mainly on white men, and it excluded females from the studies. And that was bad because then we missed out a lot of things that we needed to know. And it's not equal in that because there are differences between the sexes in that medications get absorbed differently. Diseases pop up at different rates. There's different organs obviously involved, uterus, no uterus. So we have to be cognizant of all this and really say that it's not just one issue, it's all of these things. And if we just macro or micro zoom in on one issue, we can really poison the doctor-patient relationship and get worse outcomes.
When you're thinking about the future of medicine, is there something that feels like it's right on the edge or potentially coming up in the next 1 to 5 years that you get excited about? I've talked to certain people that they're excited about for medical procedures, I guess 5G and access for, let's say, some do not know how legitimate this is. So it's a great thing to bring up with you, right? The idea of having some insert blank fantastic surgeon in Sweden, right? All of a sudden able to kind of connect to something and be able to operate a machine externally on someone that needs a life-saving surgery. Like, is that bullshit or is that on the edge, you think?
I think that's totally feasible. That's happening. Actually, on the plane coming here, I watched a documentary by Vice on AI, and that was part of what they talked about, how doctors, we already have robotic machines that are amazing, but the fact that the doctor's not even over the patient. They're like almost in a different room doing this. They're not even scrubbed in. So if we can do that, I'm sure we can do it with 5G. I mean, don't get me, I'm not a tech person, but
that's what I'm going to title this video.
Happen. But I think it can happen. And I think a big part of what we're learning is how much genetics plays a role in a lot of our conditions, how genetics changes the way medications work on us, and personalized medicine. I think that's like a big future.
Now, when you're talking about genetics, is Is that something that, and this is probably going to be ignorant to you, is that something, one, it's kind of like set in stone based off of, it's two different people, or is it something in the sense of like also what that person did across their life, right? If someone
like nature nurture conversation.
Sure.
Yeah. The more we study it, the more we find out it's both.
Okay.
And it's funny, growing up, I always believed it's both. And I don't know if it's confirmation bias because it's very difficult to identify. But in every aspect, even when we're talking about like psychology for anxiety and depression, we used to say, oh, this is just shaped on childhood trauma and adverse childhood events or some adult trauma that happened. And that is the case a percentage of the time. But then we look at people who have a genetic predisposition to it, they have higher rates. So there's really, like, it's almost always both. And I think the percentages shift depending on what condition we're talking about. So I think your environment really matters and how you're grown up, it matters, but your genetics matter just as much. That's why fat shaming, it's great to bring that up right now, is some people have a much harder time losing weight because of their genetics. So if we're just constantly out here saying, oh, it's just because you're lazy. No, this person had to work out 99% harder than you did to stay at your weight. So you fat shaming them is really unfair. And that's where I think my whole stance on that comes from.
You mentioned your childhood, not your childhood, childhood in general. But a question that I've kind of just
talk about my childhood.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, I'm always interested because I have you in front of me right now. Sure. You're the current equation of your entire past, right? Okay. What was were you inspired to do this because of family? Were you inspired at some, what made you want to be a doctor? And I ask that as a pre-med dropout who was told that I should be a doctor for 18 plus years of my life. And then I was like, oh, I suck at this and I don't care. Okay. You told me to do this to get money. And every doctor I've talked to is like, do something else.
Yes.
Yeah.
So your reason why you go into medical school or pre-med is really, that reason will define whether or not you will succeed more than anything. More than if your parents are doctors, more than if you want to become wealthy. All those things don't matter. It's what is your reason? And for me, that reason was my father was a doctor in Russia. When we came to the States, he went to medical school for a second time. So he did medical school 4 years again. He did residency all over again. And now I'm 10.
Did he have to? Or just
you do and you don't depending on your circumstance. But in this case, he did. And I got to watch it being a 9-10-year-old. Most 9-10-year-olds, their parents are already doctors or at least further in the process. So I got to watch that. And I was like, this is cool. So you get to learn about your body and other people's body. They trust you with their lives. I was good at science. And I was like, let me try it. So I started doing it. And the more and more I studied it, I became really almost obsessed learning about it. And I was generally a person who didn't want to study. My parents had to beat me basically to study. Sorry, I'm throwing them under the bus. Now I was studying this and I was like, this is cool. I can get behind this. And, I watched some shows back in the day, Friends, that when they had the doctors come on, people respected them. They had admiration. I was like, this is a good career, good job security. And when I started doing it, I fell in love even more. I was like, this is definitely the place for me because I can make impacts on people's lives. I also have a very unique skill in understanding very complex subjects and explaining them in a very simple level. Not because I'm smart, because I'm actually really stupid. And no joke. Because when I learn about white blood cells, some people are like, oh, it's because of the CD4 or whatever. The way that I think about it, I'm like, okay, so they're the linebackers and they're trying to prevent the running back from getting in the end zone. And those types of analogies that I taught myself through, I now teach my patients and on YouTube. So that has really helped me become a better doctor. And now my sort of mini obsession on psychology and influence has taken me even further, where hopefully not just making an impact on 30, 40 patients that I see in a day in my office, but millions of viewers on YouTube.
Right. So there's definitely that aspect of it. Having watched your videos as well, I know that you talked about your mother, and I was very interested to see if that had, obviously that's going to have an impact on a person, but also specifically in this field, did it change the way that you thought about your job or what you were aspiring to at the time? Very
much so. So just to give a little simple backstory, when I was in medical school, my mom was diagnosed with CLL, which is normally a very slow growing cancer. And for her, she had this rare exception where it was very advanced and it was actually affecting her immune system. So she went for these really complicated treatments where you have to destroy her immune system and replace it with somebody else's, the donors. And in that process, they cured her cancer. And we were happy about it. I remember picking her up at Mount Sinai in the city And we were like, the doctor shook my hand. He's like, it's cured. What do you know? 2 weeks later, in the process of it being cured, she got a horrible infection, went into sepsis where like the infection spreads throughout the whole body, and she died. And to me, being in that situation where you're in a room and your mom is what we call coding, her heart stops and all the residents run in and start performing chest compressions, bringing all the machines in to see if they can revive her. Being in that room and watching my dad just say, continue, 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 when I know I was already a med student at the time, there's no point to continue. We're doing more harm than good. We're essentially abusing her body. So I was the one who had to call stop on it. That's difficult.
Yeah.
It didn't affect me in that situation as much as I thought of because my focus was on making sure my dad was okay. Because he brought us from Russia to set us up for a good life here. And they were just getting on their feet because they came broke, loans, all this. And now as they're getting on their feet and things are working out, she dies. So I knew I had to be there to support him. That's actually why one of my dogs, has her own Instagram page, came into the picture. We got her to sort of bring some happiness into a moment where there's a lot of sadness. But the biggest thing that I learned is empathy and understanding patience. Because in seeing her be a patient and go through the struggle of bills and difficulties in dealing with the system, I saw how complex it was. But then one specific thing stood out to me. When she passed, we were in a waiting room waiting to get paperwork to sign death certificates, so on and so forth. And some of the nurses, when I came back to ask like what's going on, they were laughing. Complete irrespective of our situation. This is already 30 minutes later. They're having a fun time. Like they have to, otherwise they would get burned out.
Right.
But it made me really angry. So when I was a resident working in the ICU and I saw my co-residents or co-workers also laughing in a moment, like even if they're further away, I would just explain to them my situation. And it really taught us to be more cognizant of other people. So that was my biggest takeaway from it, even though it's like an uber specific example, but that was something I took away from it. Just to be really cognizant that even though you're not laughing at them or you're not trying to, you have to be sad, or at least you have to be empathetic enough to show that you're not going to go celebrate right after their loved one died.
So wait, so how many years have you been doing
practice?
This? Yeah.
I graduated medical school in 2014, so going on year 6 now.
So being a doctor, do you still feel it? And if so,
like losing a patient?
Yeah. Is it still the same?
When I was in my second year, we do these simulated labs where we have like a dummy and we try and perform chest compressions to get better in those situations. When I first heard all those alarms, I haven't heard them since my mom's passing. It jolted me. I'm usually not an emotional person. I can handle anything. But for some reason, that sound brought me right back to that room. That's never happened to me. So that really shook me. And then I was like, okay, now I know I'm feeling this. I processed it. I didn't block it out. Because the common thing that people do too often is during moments of bereavement or even a breakup with a significant other, a partner, we say, just block it out, ignore it. It will come back one way or another. So the more we ignore it and don't experience the emotions of sadness, crying, whatever it is, they're going to come back and haunt us. And the craziest part about all of that is they may haunt you not on a mental level, but on a physical level. So your sadness from your repressed emotions can show up as chronic back pain.
Oh, wow.
Literally muscle spasms.
So you're just like, I just gotta feel it now. Otherwise I'm gonna feel it later. Yeah.
In fact, there's a great book by Dr. Sarno, the late Dr. Sarno from NYU, who wrote the book called The Divided Mind, basically about how repressed emotions that are very serious will get your mind to distract you from them by giving you physical pain. Because physical pain is very distracting. Like if you have a backache, you're not thinking about your childhood. You're thinking about how to get treatment for it. You're going for all these things. And it always comes back. And I'll have patients who come in for elbow pain, back pain, shoulder pain, and they're not like athletes. They're not having trauma. Why is their body falling apart? And then I start talking to them about their childhood. And all of a sudden their pain goes away. It's like, whoa.
Wow.
Yeah.
So wait,
kind of like a mind-blowing situation.
Yeah. So what about on the opposite end of that, right? We talked about loss, but I mean, one of the reasons I talked about you on my show recently, you're on an airplane, helped save a man's life. What is...
Yeah, that's a crazy situation.
Let me connect that to a completely unrelated situation. And like, if you have a video on YouTube, you probably don't feel the highs as much anymore because you've experienced super viral videos, right? Like 10 million's a number on a video that you've hit. With a life, once again, completely not on the same level. Do you just feel like, okay, I did my job? Or is there this, yeah, that's why I did this job sort of feel? What do you even goes through your head?
We say it's our job because we don't want to come off. And I think like police officers, firefighters, all first responders know this best, but it feels really good. Okay. And I'll explain why. There's two types of happiness, intrinsic and extrinsic happiness. Intrinsic happiness, well, let's do extrinsic first. Extrinsic happiness is you want to buy a fancy watch, you want to buy a fancy car. All those things are like status things. And they all feel really good in the moment. Same thing with partying and doing all these things. They're all really good in the moment. They give you a really great high, but they don't last. And actually you get used to that high, much how we do with our views. So that high kind of goes away. Intrinsic happiness, which comes from volunteer work, helping others, creating social bonds with family members or friends, these things don't go away. That's a lasting happiness that really fulfills you and brings well-being into your life. So the more we can focus on this level of intrinsic happiness, the better we'll be. And when I was on the airplane, yeah, there was like the initial high of like all these news outlets reporting, including you, by the way. That was crazy to be at BAMF. I had to look that up.
Of course.
But the real high came from the fact that like this person wouldn't be alive if I wasn't on this plane looking homeless in my hoodie with no shoes on, like saving his life. But my training helped save someone, and that meant a lot to me. I kind of want to give you a cool test. Can I give you a cool test?
Yes.
This is awesome. You ready for this?
Yeah.
Would you rather work in a company? I'm not putting you on the spot.
I know. I'm like, I'm going wide-eyed. I'm going wide-eyed.
You can't be bad here. Would you rather work in a company where you make $90,000 a year and everyone else earns $80,000 a year? Or would you rather work in a company making $100,000 a year where everyone else makes $110,000?
Oh, right. So, well, I mean, I'd say $100,000.
You would, or are you just saying that to sound cool? Like,
no, I mean, I don't. Well, no, I mean, you also have to take into account my position, right? I own a company. I manage other people's salaries. For me, like, it's
no, forget this exists. You can't have this anymore. This is all gone.
No, but of course, my own. You said the first one is a lower amount of money.
Yeah, but you're making more than everybody else.
Yeah, no, more for me.
Okay.
Why?
Well, I'll tell you, most people, if it's only a $10,000 difference, they will choose out earning everybody.
Really?
And that's really a natural response to humans. But it's interesting that they've narrowed down to that 10,000 range. That's a pretty cool number. Because if you say 110,000 and 120,000, everyone will take the 110.
Okay.
But now if I flip this situation for you, you kind of ruined it by being good.
I'm sorry. Wait, say it again, because I want to make sure I'm not.
No, you're doing the right thing.
You said 90?
Most people prefer the status in making 90 over 80 than making 100, making more money, but less than everybody else.
I think maybe part of it comes from, I know there are a number of people that are either shitty people or are actually genuinely miserable people that are far outperforming and out earning me on this platform. But I know that I'm good. I'm covered. I think there are people out there that'll focus on other people. Some people take it to a different level and trying to tear someone down or to muddy up someone's name.
You're talking about people who are chasing extrinsic happiness.
Yeah, but that's the thing is, as long as I'm good, I'm great.
So you have a very healthy mindset.
Perfect. That's the only good thing I got going on in my brain right now.
Good thing. But that's an important thing, because the next question to that would be, let's say you answered it the other way. Let's say you went with what most people say and they preferred the 90,000 status.
Okay.
Let's say now I change it and I say, would you rather work in a company where you get 3 weeks of vacation a year and everyone else gets 1, or work in a company where you get 6 and everyone else gets 9? Everyone says more vacation because there's no status in the vacation.
Sure.
But the money, they want the status.
Okay.
So vacation, which is crazy because now you talked about this with Casey, I think, on your podcast.
Go for it. Not everyone saw it.
Oh, I'm sure everyone saw it. But you said how we need to take vacations more, and we don't. And what's crazy is you think that as you get more money, you'll get more financial freedom, which will mean more vacations. What we see in reality is the more money we make, the more we become slaves to this money and take less vacations.
Yep. That's why you have places like Google that are like, yeah, you can take however much vacation you want as long as you get the job done.
Yeah.
And then they do studies and they're like, oh no, they end up working way more.
Yeah.
Human beings are weird.
Weird, right? But it's cool kind of studying them. Because then it's like you can figure something out and make cool sound bites on
but I think it's also because it's like you can't understand a human being on paper because it's just this imperfect, broken.
Oh, of course. That's why AI. A robot's going to tell a patient, you have a cold, you don't need antibiotics. The person's going to be like, I want antibiotics. I'm going to Jamaica tomorrow. Like, robot doesn't know what to do with that.
Well, the reason earlier I asked you about, I was like, what do you think about like the future? I went into the emergency room for the first time in like 8 years, about 10 months ago. And there was a lady next door that was talking to a doctor on it's not a robot, but like, yeah, just like one of those. And I was like, what is this?
Telemedicine type
Yeah.
thing.
I mean, and the specific situation was very
Stroke?
sad, but no, it was very sad. She recently lost her husband, and I guess she started drinking, and so she fell, and it was this whole very sad thing that
It sounds like a stroke. That you fall, because the reason we bring those computers on the majority of the time is during stroke protocols. Like if a person falls or has like their mouth starts dropping and drooping, they will call that robot in with the neurologist on the line at home, and they will give them tests. Literally, like they will say, point to this, do numbers, and all these types of tests that we do, and then from there we decide whether or not we're going to give the clot busting medication.
Okay.
So that's like the reason we have those is just literally time is brain tissue.
Sure.
So we really try and get that as quick as possible. But there was a cool case, I don't know if you heard it, I covered on my YouTube channel, about in a ICU setting, they brought a robot to essentially do like hospice care.
Oh, wow.
For a family. And the person who was getting the care didn't even really understand the robot. And it was like a horrible situation. They were outraged. So like there, I'm like, maybe you shouldn't use that.
For something so sensitive?
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. This is probably the audience would be the least sympathetic to whatever your answer is.
Yeah.
Have you ever felt that you being
I'm ready for whatever.
You being as attractive as you are has
appreciate
worked against you?
No.
No? It's always just been.
If I want to be sensitive about it and just focus on that, I can zero in on it and say, yeah, they've treated me unfairly because they just think I'm this, or every time I go on a show, it's opened with this. To me, I look at that as an advantage, because who else as a young doctor would get the opportunity to go on nationwide television unless they were really good? I'm under no impression that they're inviting me because they think I'm brilliant.
Right. So
I like to believe that I have something to offer.
Sure.
And they just don't know about it yet because they're focused on the looks. But I say come for the scandal, stay for the content, or come for the
For me, it was always just when you were coming in and I was like, I wonder if it's ever worked against them in a professional setting, in that, one, I could see it as disarming. All of a sudden, people kind of maybe have the barrier down, so maybe it helps out. Or two, because you look so young, if that has also then worked against you, where someone's like, I want a second opinion, but maybe not.
No, I'm sure it has happened. I don't think I think about it much. Because if I spend enough time thinking about it,
Mike.
No, I actively don't think about it. So like, it's not like I'm like, oh, I'm just so happy all the time. I don't think about it.
Sure.
I just say, okay, like this happened. Okay, how do I adapt? I'm very practical when it comes to it. And that's why I'm a big fan of CBT. I don't know if you're familiar with the cognitive behavioral therapy.
No.
So that's basically like the most popular form of psychotherapy for those who are depressed, anxious, but it works for all sorts of things: addiction, abuse, victims, PTSD. And it's very practical. And it's basically asking yourself, what thoughts are you having that are irrational, dysfunctional, that are now leading you to feel depressed? Because it's actually your thoughts that cause you to feel depressed, not the fact that you're depressed and you have bad thoughts. Very common misconception. So for example, if you feel depressed and someone comes up to you, hey, snap out of it, they're an asshole because you can't change your feelings. But what you can do is you can change your thoughts. Very commonly what happens is, let's say I'm a student and I have 29 A's, I'm a straight A student, that's how I define myself.
Sure.
I get a C on a very hard course. I look at it, I'm like, I'm a total failure. I got a C and I harp over it, I'm a total failure. Now I take that sentence that I say to myself, I'm a total failure, that's gonna lead me to depression. If I can take that sentence, put it down on paper and say, what's the rational answer? I got one bad grade, all my other grades are great. If I improve here, I'll learn from this and I'll get better. Still sad, you're not like happy now, but you're not going into depression.
Sure.
And all of CBT is addressing a lot of these different irrational thoughts that we have. And there's different categories: black or white thinking, labeling, like feeling failure, either this person's evil or good, which is happening like crazy now online.
Sure.
Which is why I think everybody needs CBT. Because how often does it happen that a great person made one mistake, even a long time ago, that they've learned from, that we say, no, they're all evil.
Right.
No person, even if they're a murderer, is all evil. They may be great to their family, right? They may have done an evil act and they've did a heinous act or whatever we want to call it, but you can't say they're all evil. Because what if they're really nice to puppies?
I don't know if that gets to go into the equation for me personally.
But again, that's how I think about it in the mental health space. So every time people have these like Mind reading is another common one. So we cross each other on the street, cross paths.
Sure.
I look at you to say hi, wave, you don't even respond to me. And I'm like, wow, he must hate me. I'm reading your mind. But now you're walking out because you just lost your show. Whatever, I'm just giving a bad example. Something horrible happens in your life, and you're all focused on that. You're not even looking at me. You're looking through me. But I'm mentally reading you and saying, oh, he hates me. I'm a bad person.
Sure.
That happens so often. So I really try and sit with my patients and do this type of therapy all the time because I do it even to myself. It's very easy.
So when
to
you're
fall
talking about
into.
CBT, is it something that people do need to go to a medical professional, or there's like online resources or resources
So there
elsewhere?
it is technically something you should do with a therapist or a counselor or a doctor who's licensed to do this. But there are great books. Like the prime example that I always talk about is a book called Feeling Good.
Okay.
It's written about CBT to be performed on your own. And actually it's proven that if you have a mild case of depression, reading this book alone and doing the little exercises in it will help. Statistically, it's proven.
Statistically.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm going to blindly believe it, but I also am.
The study on it is crazy because
Yeah.
they literally gave people the book and they made them do the exercise, and they gave a percentage of people who didn't read the book. That's not enough. At 2 weeks, they flipped it. They took away the book from the initial group, and then they gave it to the other group. And guess what? It completely reversed.
Wow.
So the book was making an impact.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
That's insane.
Yeah.
So Mike, this has been really fun. A thing that I try and do with everyone that I have on is there kind of like a piece of advice or thing that you want to say that you think could benefit people in their life?
This is more on the medical side of things, but I think it applies to everybody.
Okay.
Medicine is an imperfect science, and anyone that comes to you sure of everything, they're what's known as an IKA expert. I know all expert. And you should be aware of these people because these people will promise you things and it will not come to fruition. So if you can find a doctor that's not afraid to say, I don't know, you found yourself a really good doctor.
Oh, wow. I love that. And maybe even just, I think it goes way further than medicine.
Yeah.
I love that.
Well, because as you study more in life, any given subject, you realize you just have a bunch more questions than you have answers.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
beware
man.
of IKA experts.
IKA. Don't get them in your life.
Yes.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah,
man.
thanks for having me. Appreciate it.